From India to the United States, not one environment is the same. From the communities that people live in, to the resources they are given, up till the physical environment that people live in, not one thing is the same. It is key to understand and know how these external factors affect and contribute to the way that people are able to overcome their obstacles, and its direct correlation to individual performance. It's what sociologists call nurture, the environment. But it really takes a second to think and have the epiphany of how much of an impact our environment has on our potential. Let's take a look at education, the textbooks. Well, put the textbooks aside and think about this. So it just so happens that sometimes better schools are in in areas that are more financially sound, where people who make more money and can afford better homes reside. Now, based on research, it just so happens that more money spent per student usually has a direct correlation with student performance. For instance, in his recent report entitled "Does Money Matter?", Bruce Baker of Rutgers University concludes that on average, aggregate measures of per pupil spending are positively associated with improved or higher student outcomes. So why does this matter to us? Well, as you can see, the external factors that we live in do have a severe impact and correlation to the types of choices that we make. Although some of these external factors are not in our control, there are some that we can control. So when we choose the types of friends that we make or the environments in which we hang out and relax, sometimes it can be a better idea to choose a more positive and more warm, cozy environment, because in the future it may do us better and serve us a better purpose for the future actions that we make and the ways in which we overcome our problems. Now, what kind of implications does this have on a more global scale? Well, for instance, if we take a look at hot weather as an obstacle to overcome, we can see two very different approaches from two different environments. In the United States, central air conditioning tends to be the norm, and people tend to stay away from the heat. However, in India, people tend to come onto the rooftops to avoid spending too much costs. Also, riding bicycles is much more common here than it is in the US. Now, by analyzing one of the characters from The Other Wes Moore by Wesley Moore, we get a better idea of how a tight budget and family structure based off of a single mom can really have a severely negative impact on the child. First, we start on page 16 with the quote that reads, "The $6.50 an hour she was making at Bayview was enough to keep the balance of her tuition paid, the lights on, and the kids fed." It shows us that Wes had a much higher tendency to try to bring in some source of income to the family because his mother was a single mother who was having to support two children and herself to bring food to the family. Next, on page 112, the quote reads, "With a demand like that and an ample supply, it was hard not to make money. He and his team were taking all the risks. They were the ones who faced the arrests and the danger." Now, from this quote, we can see that Wes was willing to take all the risks necessary in order to bring in resources to the family. We see that due to the ability of the environment to enter the drug game, Wes took full advantage of the drugs and really started to make use of his physical environment, whether that be for good or bad. And finally, we see how the inability for Wes's environment to help him overcome his obstacles really takes a drastic effect on him mentally. He asks, where was God when people didn't make enough money to feed their families? Where was God when there were kids selling rocks at 12 years old, and their parents encouraged it because the kids were the main breadwinners in their home? Where was God when a young boy came home from school that was as uninterested in him as he was? Finally, we see how Wes's environment begins to take full effect on him as he begins to question his faith in God. He begins to ask where the resources are for his family, as sometimes they don't even have enough food to eat. He questions why he has to sell drugs in order to bring in resources such as money to the family. This question is relevant to all of us, as we've all had to overcome problems throughout our lifetimes. However, directly or indirectly, the physical environment and the types of family structures and resources that we've lived in have played a key role in deciphering how we went about solving our issues.
My views have changed significantly, as before I thought that the choices people make are solely based on their psychological perspective and the way that people think. However, by exploring the effect of an environment on society, I've seen that a lot of what people do has to do with the circumstances they're in and the real need people have for something because of lack.
I really think it's our global duty to try to enhance the environments that other people live in by getting involved in volunteer work or even helping out in charities. This will help people overcome the same obstacles that we have, like getting a job, getting a good education, that people might not be able to get if they don't have the right resources.
By exploring this topic, I've really learned to take appreciation to the type of environment that I live in.
One thing's for sure, we're all just the same human beings living in a different environment.